Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by 4for4 Bets. Ryan Newton, joined here as always by Connor Allen, continuing our divisional preview series, shifting to the AFC after wrapping up all things NFC. Note at the top, we're recording live, so you're hanging out with us live. We appreciate it. Thumbs up if you're on YouTube, 4for4 Bets YouTube channel. Subscribe. So you're going to find all of our betting content here all season long. If you're finding us on Twitter, you can move over there. Definitely check that page out. Move the Line in podcast form, wherever you listen to podcasts. You're not going to hear this podcast for a handful of days. I'm out of pocket for a little bit for this week, so we're recording ahead of time. So if there's any news that happens, breaking news in the next 5 or 6 days in terms of what happens here in the AFC South, apologies for not addressing it because we're recording this here on Friday. So we might miss that. So again, just, letting you know if you're hearing this in podcast and we don't talk about a major injury that happened in the last 48 hours or so, it's because we recorded this before that happened. So just FYI, again, if you want to check out any of the things we did on the NFC side, we put a bow on that yesterday, gave you our playoff teams for the NFC, gave you our NFC championship matchup, along with our Super Bowl representative of the conference as well. So excited to kick off the AFC with the South here. Connor, what's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Learned pre-show that North Carolina is only an 11-hour drive from Chicago. My mind is thoroughly blown. I thought you were pulling my leg. Again, still don't really comprehend how Ohio is 5, 6, 7 hours away sections, and North Carolina is only 11. But you learn something new every day. I haven't gone on that many road trips. I know our former co-host John Daigle is probably going to be laughing at this because he's driven around the United States like 50 times. But
yeah.
I'm learning more. I'm excited for your trip though, and it seems like it'll be a good time.
Yeah, I've family and traveling with kids, especially a 3-year-old who 3-year-old dictator doesn't sound like a great experience. So we're looking into it. I was like, man, it is going to cost an arm and a leg to fly and to rent a car, do all these different things, and it's like, wait, it's only 11 hours and change to get from like Chicago suburbs to the greater Greensboro, Charlotte area. Let's just road trip. So we're going to do an overnight thing. For some reason, they let me, with my work on the BetSports golf side, we are considered a real golfing operation. So they let me get credentials for tournaments and stuff. So I'm going to be credentialed for next week's Wyndham Championship, boots on the ground, going to hang out with our boy Akshay Bhatia. My guy Russell Henley will be there, waiting for that full field release here this afternoon. But, we rub some elbows with some of the final event. That's the last PGA Tour event before the playoffs start. So some of the guys that are looking to make the playoffs, position themselves out there. We'll have some, on the golf side, follow us on BetSports Golf. Follow me on Twitter. You get some boots on the ground stuff there for the Wyndham next week. It'll be pretty exciting. So yeah, looking forward to that and looking for some time off. But again, excited to continue to talk football. We're shifting. Obviously, the playoffs on the golf side are not super exciting like they are on the football side, and we're continuing here. And excited to shift to the AFC. We touched on a little bit as we were talking in the tail end yesterday on some of our early thoughts on what we think is going to happen here in terms of like basically contenders that could compete with the Chiefs and actually put up a fight. But absolutely excited to unpack this here. Let's jump into it and get started here. From a scheduling standpoint, the AFC South is playing the AFC East and the NFC North. Some like, you think about those two divisions, some tough, top-heavy divisions, but there are some easier squads in there as well. And now one team really benefits from that, and we'll get to that here for sure. Texans are your favorite. They are 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. Get that on DraftKings. They are plus 850. Also on DK to win the AFC. And to win this division here, they are plus 105 available on DraftKings, also on FanDuel. The win total, 9.5. It's juiced to the over. Minus 130 on Caesars is the best price for that. So we've seen this shift happen, right? It's not uncommon to have a rookie quarterback come in with a new head coach. Very few had this like franchise altering season that we saw last year in Houston with CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. It was pretty evident that DeMeco was going to be a really good head coach. Obviously a former Texan, was a great linebacker for them for years, playing, in coaching in the system there with Shanahan. It just seemed, and the stuff we were hearing even last year when we did this South preview, he seemed to have like the intangibles, that like it factor. No one knows what it is or how to define it, but when you see it, you know what it is. And it seemed like guys were going to love playing for him. But we also were just like, and this roster still just a lot of questions, and it was just kind of tough. But Coach of the Year finalist, CJ Stroud hits the ground running, Rookie of the Year. They make a playoff game, and gave the Ravens a little bit of a fight in that game too. Just absolutely torched, the Browns in a playoff game, who the best defense in the league, and then obviously almost advanced again in the second playoff game. So just again, high risk, high reward moves by trading up again to get Will Anderson Jr., who goes on to become the defensive Rookie of the Year. Like just these massive, massive swings, and they hit it all out of the park. So, this was like organization just in a massive downfall, kind of with all the Jack Easterby BS, the Deshaun Watson and all that was going on there, and then just a couple of swings. And now this is one of the teams in the league. If you were to think about where teams are going in the next 4 to 5 years, I think we make a conversation around the Bears and the Texans. Probably, I think, are in the team picture in terms of where you think these teams are going to be in the next handful of years. So pretty exciting about the Texans.
Yeah, when we tried to poke some holes in the Texans last year with DeMeco Ryans, he's more than just a leader of men. He not only had kind of that influential factor, he also was a defensive coordinator. He obviously played ball, so he knows ball. He's also a good leader. It's that combination that I think can be really powerful, especially when you're comparing that and adding that with an offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, that I think did a really good job of adjusting in his first year as offensive coordinator. So if you look at their numbers as a whole, they were really run heavy on first down, but this shifted dramatically throughout the season. Weeks 1 through 11, their neutral pass rate on first down, 37.9%. Obviously very low, very bad. You don't want to be running a ton on the first down. You kind of want to pass on first down, maybe mix it up, but you don't want to be predictable and run a bunch. But in weeks 12 on, again, when CJ Stroud and the offense started clicking a little bit more, 51% pass rate on neutral pass rate on first down. It was I think top 5 or 6 in the league. So I think to me, that proves that with the addition of Stephon Diggs, with Joe Mixon and better offensive line, they're willing to kind of adapt to their weapons and be able to be okay, we can throw and maybe run a little bit, but we're not going to just rely on running the ball every time on first down to get ourselves in second or third manageable, because that just resulted in CJ Stroud having to bail them out on second and third down pretty consistently because they were not very good at running the ball then. So I think offensively, I'm really excited for them. Obviously, the combination of Nico, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs is an awesome wide receiver trio. If you would have told me that a year before, imagine that. Nico Collins, and you said this, Nico Collins and Tank Dell were not household names like they are now. Now we know they're good players. They partnered with CJ Stroud. Before, they were very much unknown. So I'm at least excited on the offensive side.
Yeah, and the offensive side too. It comes down, it's so simple. When you avoid taking sacks at a high level and you don't turn the football over, that just, especially as a rookie, that historically translates very well. So there's some pause at times where you're just all right, well, no one knew what to expect for CJ Stroud. There could be some just natural regression there. Some of the stuff we talked about with Jordan Love, you can come back a little bit and fall, but some of these things are sticky, right? When you take care of the football, and there's variance at times and interceptions and stuff like that. But he also he took a bunch of sacks early, the first 2 weeks, and then didn't. And the offensive line is pretty solid. Actually, a way better pass blocking offensive line than run blocking offensive line, which is just part of the problem that you were talking about with Slowick wanting to run early and often on early downs. You can shift there a little bit too, but I don't know, man. I think that we see enough of CJ Stroud to feel this is the dude. And when you get him, you get him on these doing podcasts, he's doing content. He's just been more out there. You get him on whiteboards and talking about offense. It's just he just gets it right. We don't always know what that looks like, but I'm sure all these guys to a degree are going to impress when you get him on a whiteboard. But you can just tell there's something different with this kid, and it was hard to project because it's obviously that Ohio State offense, just everyone's open. We joked he's never going to have a wide receiver group in the NFL better than what he had in his final year at Ohio State. And that's probably still true, but it's closer all of a sudden, right? And part of that is him as a talent elevator too. So, and Slowick's a guy that I think just obviously the analytics community is put their arms around. He's former PFF guy and all those different things. So I like the call out that you made there with the adjustments too, because you've seen a lot of that with, content and people in the space talking about how he needs to adjust and get off of that Shanahan stuff of running early and all those different things. And I think Joe Mixon is a nice addition too. Devin Singletary really is not a difference maker, and the trouble with Dameon Pierce, he's a little bit older at this point, but I think that Mixon is definitely a guy that can win and at least make them competitive too. So yeah, it's hard not to be bullish on the offense. Defensively, like super, I really love what they did. I mean, so Will Anderson Jr., like everyone at the time was like, I was kind of a sketchy trade because you're thinking it's a nice draft next year. You're giving up a pick that could be top 5 or top 10, but then you go out and you're a playoff team and that pick becomes like 26th or 27th or whatever it was. And Will Anderson Jr. was awesome. Like, and he dealt with a high ankle sprain. He was third in ESPN's pass rush win rate on the season. Only Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett were better. He was second in run stop win rate at the position. So like, he was just really, really good and played limited snaps because of the ankle injury and missed some time. So again, and got better as the season went along. So it's really hard not to be super bullish on who that kid is. They got pillaged a little bit and like with a bunch of guys in free agency, but they went out and added a bunch back. Like Daniel Hunter on the other side, like he's just been one of the most consistent pass rushers in the league. He's got 13 or more sacks in 5 of the past 7 seasons. So that's just a really nice bookend duo. Danico Archery, underrated move, just suspended. We'll see if he appeals and what happens there. PEDs, but like really good interior pass rusher. So like they have really good guys up front. I like the linebacker crew. They have versatility in the back end. Derek Stingley was awesome last year. He was 5th in PFF coverage grade. He just needs to stay healthy. He's kind of an anchor there. Everything gets a little bit more complicated if he's off the field. But again, like I think D'Amico was just a great coach, and I think they're going to find a way to do it. So be very surprised if they're not probably the winners of the division, or at least a playoff team and competitive again too, as long as they stay healthy. So yeah, the ceiling is the roof for the Texans.
Yeah, like they're not. I would say they're not a complete team, especially defensively or offensively. Again, their offensive line has some holes. But I think their strengths and their star power overcome a lot of their issues, and so like that kind of puts them in a spot here where they can win 10, 11, 12 plus games here. So if we look at their schedule too, it's interesting. They're favored in the first 6 straight games to start the season, but they have these interesting pockets of games that are pretty tough. They play the Jets, Lions, and Cowboys in 3 games in a row, and then the Dolphins, Chiefs, and Ravens in another 3-game set. So obviously those are 3 really tough games, but I mean, like we talked about, this is a good team. Like they're going to be able to compete in all those games. None of those are going to be crazy blowouts or anything. Given the star power they have offensively, I think their offense alone can do that. And then if the defense can be good, which it seems like you think that they're going to be pretty good, like that will help as well. So I'm pretty bullish on this team. I think that top to bottom, they're the clear best team in the division. I think that we might have some disagreements on where there could be value, or maybe agreements where there could be value further on the board. But like face value, nothing happens. All these teams are healthy. I think the Texans probably win 10, 11 games here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the way to play it would be alt overs on the win total, right? Like, something into the 10.5 or 11 change, like just having them have a ceiling outcome. They stay healthy. But they, maybe top seed in the AFC or something like that. Like I would bank on a ceiling outcome versus, laying -130 to take, over 9.5 wins. So yeah, I think just the trajectory is up. I think, Stroud could take a step. Will Anderson Jr. takes a step. D'Amico is a little bit more comfortable. We see the improvements that you highlighted with Slowick move this team forward a little bit more efficiently. So yeah, it's hard not to be bullish on the Texans and think that they're going to be in the mix and true contenders here again in the AFC. All right, Jaguars are next. 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. It's available on DraftKings. They are 28-1 to win the AFC. That's available on MGM. Caesars has the best price for them to win the division here at 3-1, and the win total 8.5, mostly flat. You can take under 8.5 at plus money on Caesars. So it's kind of one place where it's juiced a little bit more to the over. So last year the expectations were really high for Jacksonville. Again, part of it was like we had discussion where they were one of those teams where the rest of the division was just kind of in transition, right? You were going to have essentially 3 rookie quarterbacks, and then Jacksonville, who was coming off of a nice little playoff run and a little bit more assured of themselves, and they started 8-3. Seemed like they were okay. Then defense started to struggle a little bit. You had Trevor Lawrence get hurt, Christian Kirk got hurt, and then wheels kind of fell off. They were finished 1-5. They had a chance to play themselves into the playoffs basically in week 18 against a Titans team who had been playing out the stretch for the majority of the season, and then they lost. They couldn't get it done, missed the playoffs, and had to start over. I don't love what they did this offseason, Connor, but I'll give you the floor here on the Jags.
No, I don't particularly either. I think they have a couple of weaknesses here that are pretty glaring. In the offensive line, we have them 26th in our rankings. They added Mitch Morse, but I mean, again, a center is not really going to like kind of dictate your offensive line.
Right.
They lost Calvin Ridley. They added Gabe Davis, kind of the Zay Jones role, I would say, basically a field stretcher. And then they also drafted Brian Thomas to play Calvin Ridley's role, I think, in a sense, just mainly be outside. And I think while he is upside, I think he's a fine prospect. I mean, expecting that to click right away, I think it's kind of foolish. So you have a bad offensive line between worse weapons than they had last year. And then defensively, like they lost some players, they added Ronald Darby. The front seven is solid. Like I think they're going to be a solid unit, but I don't know if I'd really expect them to be awesome. So in my mind, like this season really comes down to Trevor Lawrence. Like if he's playing his best, we've seen that. I mean, he can win basically any game, but he just, even in easy games, like he just turns into a goofball out there and like makes mistakes. And you're like, what is going on? Like what is he doing out there? And that type of stuff just can't happen with the roster that they have. I mean, there's too many issues that to overcome consistently. He needs to be at his best, and he needs to take a step forward this year for the Jags to compete in this division. Because frankly, I think I like the Colts better than them. I very much like the Texans better than them. And I don't know if I'm super interested in playing like an alt under on the Jags. I still think that Trevor Lawrence will get him to 6, 7, 8 wins, but I think under 8.5 here is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I agree with you. I think the front seven's strong defensively, but the back end is a lot more questions than answers for sure. Darius Williams was really good for them last year. They let him walk. Rayshon Jenkins has been terrific for them. They let him walk. They brought in Ryan Nielsen, who was with Dennis Allen in New Orleans, and then last year was his first year as an actual defensive coordinator and calling plays for Atlanta. That did not go particularly well. He's going to have a better pass rush for sure here than he would in Atlanta, but he likes to run a lot of man, a lot of nickel, and he just doesn't have the dogs to do that on the perimeter. So the pass rush is going to have to win a ton. I don't love that here at all. I don't love the fit, and we haven't seen him really adapt a lot. I think he's just like, this is what my defense does. This is what we're going to do. We'll see how that goes. Darnell Savage, I think, is going to play slot for them. He's just a traditional safety most of the time in Green Bay before. That could be okay, but I don't love the safety group behind him, a little bit older. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, you touched on the offseason moves offensively. Like Calvin Ridley was up and down. I think he was a disappointment overall. They kind of played chicken and lost with what they were trying to do with him in the offseason. And then like Brian Thomas Jr. could be good. They added Gabe Davis. That feels redundant to me. Like those guys both win as like big bodied perimeter deep threats. It's just a lot of pressure on Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram to win like in the intermediate and over the middle and different things like that. So I don't love it. The offensive line's a problem. And I don't know. I like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's fine, but has he been a guy? I think you did a good job highlighting that. He just hasn't been a guy that's like taking the team to the next level. You get these bad turnovers and, we just haven't seen a guy that's really taken the next step. And I think he kind of has to do that here for them. So the schedule's tough. I mean, look at the opening schedule. Like they also give up 2 home games on the year with the back-to-back road games in London. And I think they have a clear advantage in the second leg of that, right? Last year too, that was the Buffalo game, and they kind of absolutely whooped Buffalo in that spot where they probably wouldn't have otherwise. But the second game this year is against New England. It's like one of the only like assured wins that they have on their schedule. Like it's really tough to start. Miami, Cleveland, Buffalo, Houston, Indy, Chicago to start. Like that's a gauntlet to get going. And now last year they came out of the 2 London games with a bye. They punted on the bye. They don't have a bye until week 11. They come back to the States, play Green Bay, Philly, Minnesota, and Detroit. It's tough. I mean, I like under 8.5. I like alt unders. I kind of teased it. Like I think we did a hot takes show. 15-1 to start 0-5. It basically is a coin to me. Again, Miami, Cleveland, Buffalo, Houston. I think all of those teams I'm pretty comfortable or better. It's basically week 5 home to the Colts, who I really like and think that they're better than Jacksonville. So again, I touched on this, probably better to just bet those, a week over and roll it over versus just taking that as a future, but it's fun. It's available. I don't know. I think DraftKings has that as well. So I just think that there's some downside of this team that could be a problem. They could still maybe flirt with, like you said, 7-8 wins, but I don't think this is a 9-win football team. I don't think this is a playoff team at all.
I kind of think Doug Peterson's going to get fired here mid-season.
First coach fired? What's
Yeah,
that
I was gonna
market?
say, I don't know, because like a lot of books don't even have that market anymore. Like it's like a lot of offshore ones have them, but like domestics have stopped posting that as frequently, or at least I can't find it. I mean, they're offering like 2,000, 10,000 different futures bets. So I can never find it. But
Yeah.
if you have those odds, I think those are pretty interesting because, like you said, the schedule's tough. He's already been a little bit on the hot seat. They haven't really won enough, given that. I mean, he has Trevor Lawrence. Like, I don't know. I think that's not great. My question to you is, how many tackles for Oluokun this year? A billion?
Billion. I think he leads the league again, probably pushing. He stays healthy. We're pushing 170, 180 again. The absolute dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's the man.
just a million tackles. So I have a feeling
Million
we'll
tackles.
see some overs probably early in the season, especially if the
Especially if
market.
they're getting their teeth kicked in, right? Like
Yeah.
just, that does translate to tackles as a game script and teams are having to run more with the lead and like second half and stuff like that. Conservative, shorter passes, and Oluokun's great in coverage. So yeah, Oluokun, just when we stay healthy, he's going to pile them up.
I will say, so the Jags schedule and kind of their look ahead lines are really interesting because, like you said, it's a really tough start. If you look at their schedule as a whole, like, and how look ahead lines shape up, they're 15 of their games are the spread within 4. So like basically, either way, 4. So it seems like the market like is kind of giving them respect, but it's also like, what do we really do with this team?
Yeah.
And so, because again, that includes like the Lions, the Eagles, the Packers, like most of their first 5 games, even they're within like a 2, 3, 4 point spread as underdogs. So like those are generally kind of attributed, not necessarily coin flips, but like, winnable games. Whereas I don't know if I really view it like that. So I think the market may be a little bit higher on the Jags than you and I are. I'm not really sure when the best place to take advantage of that. They're actually favored against Cleveland at home in week 2. That might be a spot to bet on the Browns. So I don't know. I mean, if maybe bet in some of these look ahead lines here later in the season, because some just stand out to me where I'm like, that just seems like way too much respect for the Jags.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. It's that pocket of like post London games that I just touched on too. Come back from London, back-to-back weeks, host Green Bay, go to Philly. That's tough. Minnesota might be a spot where they can get a win, and then they're on the road to Detroit before. Like Detroit could absolutely steamroll them at home. As a team who's hasn't had a bye yet, it's still got a little bit of like sometimes you might not see that London thing trickle down until a couple weeks later. So that could be a spot where you're taking alt lines on the Lions and stuff like that. So just down on the Jags. I think the floor is a little bit lower, and part of it too, right? You have a Super Bowl winning head coach. You have a quarterback that's highly regarded. This is not an anti-Trevor Lawrence thing. And just roster wise, I think they've swung and missed often, and don't like how they've handled free agency. And I don't love it. So again, you'd like to have a pass rush, and they haven't. I'm interested to see if Nielsen adjusts based off of what he has, and if they lose, Ronald Darby's not like someone that you get super excited about. He's fine.
No.
He's a little bit older. He's ideally playing in the slot, and then they want to play Savage there. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what they do. So down on the Jags, 15-1, start 0-5. Little sexy sprinkle if you want to get down. All right, next is the Colts, 65-1 to win the Super Bowl, 35-1 to win the AFC. Those are both on DraftKings. If you want to win the division, they are plus 330. You can get that on Caesars. 8.5 is the win total, slightly juiced to the under. My intentions were to not continue to gush because basically I've had some sort of Colts take every show we've done this offseason. So I'm going to try to not go super long and give you the floor and let you go here. It's pretty simple to me. Like, this is a 9-8 team last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor were on the field together for 2 snaps all season. Anthony Richardson posted a 92.3% accuracy rate in his limited sample. Would have ranked 10th on the season. Obviously, there's a lot of projection in that. He only played 4 games. But my love for Richardson going back to the pre-draft process was part of it was citing his completion percentage at Florida was massively flawed because they just asked him to run and throw deep. I wrote about him when he was drafted. You look at the heat maps that we got, like he was just everything in and over the middle of the field, short, intermediate was blue. They just didn't ask him to do there. Everything around the boundaries and deep was bright red. That's how they asked him to play at Florida. And then he's coming out and everyone's like, this kid threw 53% completion percentage. It's like, well, I mean, do a little bit more research. And look, Shane Steichen, like, we got double confirmation that Shane Steichen is good last year because he made this team competitive. They got to the Week 18 game against the Texans. That was a play-in game for the playoffs. And they almost won that game and made the playoffs with Minshew. Then you look at how the Eagles played last season, especially offensively. They were kind of stale. They were changing in-season coordinator. It was just a completely different team than what they were the year before when they went to the Super Bowl. You got a great offensive line. Everyone's thought this offensive line's been really good for years because Quentin Nelson's the dude. Now they're actually a really good offensive line. They have other guys, Braden Smith, Bernard Reinhardt, the other guys that are like legit. This is a top 5 offensive line. It's not a flawless roster, but it's really good. I like the defense too. Excited about the Colts, Connor.
Yeah, this Colts team, I think has a lot of upside. You touched on it with Steichen. Like, it became very apparent really quickly that he was able to just adapt what Anthony Richardson could do to what he needed to be done. Like, there's a lot of short stuff, just like play action, scheming guys open, like making the game easy for Anthony Richardson right off the rip. And so I think it was just like really apparent, like week 1, halftime of week 1. I was like, oh, it's just like I was wrong. I was like very much down on the Colts / Anthony Richardson, at least to start. I thought the upside was there, but like I walked that back immediately. And I think that is probably the right decision because his upside is massive. And now they added A.D. Mitchell, who's apparently running as wide receiver 4 right now, but behind Alec Pierce. But still, I think he'll be a factor at some point during the season. And then, Pittman's there. Josh Downs, again, that whole unit when healthy, I think is pretty solid. But then you add in the fact, like you mentioned, like an actual running game. Anthony Richardson actually playing a couple games would be awesome. A little worried that the nonstop like headlines have been like, we're not going to ask him to do less. We're not going to ask him to run less. We're not going to ask him to slide. Like, I mean, he's a big dude, so maybe he can take it. Maybe he's Cam Newton, essentially. But again, that's not what I want to hear if I'm like backing laying any juice on a team. Thankfully, we don't have to lay any juice. Like the way the market's set up here, the Colts are like plus 330 to win the division. Alt overs, again, I think are very much in play, plus money. That's how I'd approach it because, again, I think that like the floor is obviously reasonably high because we saw essentially the floor last year, I think, in a lot of senses. But, I don't love to lay any juice on a quarterback that's just going to get beaten to pulp for half the season or beat other people to pulp, but he's just going to take a ton of hits. It'll be awesome when he's healthy and fully playing. I think that the Colts can beat virtually anyone. Like, I think that they are very much like in play to beat anyone any week, which you cannot say the same about every other team. And I don't think is the same for the Jaguars and definitely not the Titans in this division here. Looking at their schedule, pretty easy schedule. There's like a tough midsection here. Bills, Jets, Lions, weeks 10 through 12. But they get Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jags to end the season. In somewhere in that section. I mean, those are some of the worst teams in the league, in my opinion. So, I think that they have, even if they start tough, they're kind of 500-ish, maybe heading in there into that range. That would be awesome because they can rip off, 3 or 4 wins in that section there. So I think the Colts future is the way to go. We talked about Anthony Richardson MVP. I think in a market where MVP market is essentially dead, I think that he's actually at a pretty live number to play.
Love it. I mean, we touched on like the unique 3. I love doing that with the schedule because there's, 3 teams that every team in the division plays unique, right? And we talked about like you're going to play each other, you play the other conferences or other divisions that you play, and then you split up the 3 other divisions and play each one team in that division. Well, look at the Texans is tough. They play Kansas City, Dallas, Baltimore. It's a really good football team though, so we don't think poorly of the Texans. But when you think about who do the Colts play from the AFC West? They play Denver. Okay. Well, who do they play from the NFC East? Because the Texans are playing Dallas. Well, they get the Giants. Okay. The NFC they play, or the AFC North, right? There's 3 really good teams in that division and maybe a 4th that's okay. Well, they get the Steelers, the 4th team in that division. So they get a massive edge comparatively, where look at the Jags play Philly and the Browns. The Titans even play the Bengals and the Chargers. So the Colts get really a great draw comparatively to the rest of the teams in the division, who all have like on the harder side of schedules, and the Colts don't. So that's also a really, really nice piece too. So, yeah, I mean, I love all the offensive pieces. I think they complement each other well. Defensively, they lost Samson Ebukam to a season-ending injury. That hurts, but they're really deep at edge. When they drafted Laiatu Latu, it was a little bit surprising because it wasn't necessarily a need for them comparatively to some of the other stuff, but like he's also an absolute dog and he's crushing practice right now. Like reports coming out today that he was just like a problem. Anthony Richardson's talking about it. Like I have to play differently when he's out there. He's, is athletic. Well, no one has ever in the testing of anything at the combine has been as athletic as Anthony Richardson, but Latu is absolutely that dude. DeForest Buckner is a future Hall of Famer in like historically underrated. Awesome. Like they have a great edge rushing crew. They need to get a lot of help around the perimeter. Kenny Moore's awesome in the slot. They need young guys to step up. Juju Brents, Dallas Flowers, some of the other guys at corner to get that done. That's kind of the weakness of the roster. But if you got a great edge rushing group, great linebacker group, everything else gets a little bit easier. So yeah, I don't think they're better than the Texans. I have a hard time saying that they'd beat the Texans to win this division. But to make the playoffs at plus money, plus 140 or so to make the playoffs, I think that's pretty interesting. Or alt win totals, or even just as you said, like we're getting pretty decent numbers just to get them to 9 wins based off the current market prices. So I'm in on the Colts. Give me the over. Give me Colts to make the playoffs. I think and give me Anthony Richardson, offensive player of the year, MVP. Laiatu is kind of the favorite to win defensive rookie of the year, but I don't think it's a terrible price to be honest. So yeah, I'm in on all things Colts.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I can't blame you. I know you've been talking about it all off season, and I mean, it's adding up here. So I mean, I think there could be buying points too early in the season. I mean, again, you talked about the early season schedule a little bit here. I mean, Texans, Packers, Bears is not ideal to start. Those are 3 really good teams, but they should be 3 competitive games. Again, they're 1.5 point dogs, 4 point dogs, 2 point favorites against the Bears. Like I think that those are all going to be really competitive games to start the season.
Yeah, Ballard just taking a bunch of guys that I've loved in the pre-draft process in the last couple of years. I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm a Patriots fan at heart. I don't like the Colts at all. Like we've hated the Colts. But now it's like I'm gushing to the Colts because they're taking, Richardson, Juju Brents, Latu, like the guys that I've really loved pre-draft process. They're all ended up in Indy. Michael Pittman's my guy. Like he's just always been, So yeah, Colts I think are going to be exciting, and young guys too should be exciting to see what happens. And again, we got Joe Flacco as a backup. So if we happen to take a bunch of hits, again, it's a different ceiling, but I still think that they could be competitive in terms of getting to the win total. They probably obviously don't reach the ceiling outcomes without Richardson, but I think they can still be competitive. All right, last is the Titans. Titans are 150 to win the Super Bowl, 80-1 on DraftKings to win the AFC. 10-1 on DraftKings and Caesars to win this division here. 6.5 is the win total, slightly juiced to the under. Very busy offseason. Obviously, moving on from Mike Vrabel, that was one of the, I think, more surprising moves in the offseason. Seemed like there's a little bit of an internal struggle there with the ownership group, and he wanted some control. He wanted a little bit. He didn't want to hire the GM that they hired. He wanted to kind of have that role. Didn't go over very well. Anyway, moved on. Replaced him with Bengals OC Brian Callahan. Moves didn't stop there. We're looking at about 6 to 7 new starters on both sides of the ball. Very active in free agency. I'm not sure that's the best way to approach things, but we'll see what happens there. They were, I think, just always in competitive spots. A lot of times I think we do the weekly show and talk about handicapping games, and it was always just like, but Vrabel, you know what I mean? Like we just never knew, because like there'd be times where they just would be better than we thought because he would keep them in games. And I think that happened at times last year. I think that's going to be hard to replicate for this new coaching staff in year one. I think there's a lot to like about Callahan. I think early indications are he's going to be pretty successful at this, but he's tied to Will Levis, and that's kind of, I think, the handicap here of the Titans.
Yeah, and they're going to throw a lot too. A lot has been made of like kind of the neutral pass rate. Vrabel was obviously super run heavy, built it on Derrick Henry and a strong offensive line, things like that. Now we have, obviously their offensive line deteriorated. I think they built that back up in the offseason, drafted J.C. Latham, added Lloyd Cushenberry as well. So like they built out the tackles, added some more interior. I think that's awesome too. It's going to be a lot of pressure on Will Levis though, right off the rip here, especially with DeAndre Hopkins suffering an injury in the preseason here, out 4 to 6 weeks. I think that he's probably doubtful for week 1, maybe 50-50 at best. Even if he does play, wouldn't be surprised to see him be a decoy. Make a mental note there, maybe take his prop unders in week 1. But he did that a lot last year. And I mean, we bet against him a couple times, and it was free money as long as you get the tip that, he's basically just out there running wind sprints, cardio half the time. But I mean, it's a lot of pressure on Will Levis, even with the addition of Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, which I actually like as like a slot only player. I think is totally fine. But again, if you don't have DeAndre Hopkins, then you're putting a little bit of pressure on Treylon Burks. And like, can Will Levis in a pass-heavy offense be that guy? That's a major, major question here. Defensively, though, I think that adding L'Jarius Sneed, I think is solid. Their front seven's already pretty good too. They have Jamal Adams as well, who I think didn't really play all that well, but he's fine. I would say didn't grade well at all in PFF, but I guess had upside at one point in his career. So I don't know. I think this is interesting because they are favored in one game this season at home against the Patriots, only 2.5-point favorites. But I think that they're better than the market is giving them respect for, in a sense. Like, I don't think that like they're going to beat one of the teams of like the Commanders or the Vikings or,
Sure.
like one of those teams. Like, they're going to win a couple games. If Hopkins was healthy, if we were seeing good reports, if I can kind of see it first and see what it's going to look like, I would have a little more confidence. I did play a little bit of over 5.5 wins, like way back when. I just thought that was like crazy considering what they added. But now we're looking at 6.5, a little bit of juice in the over. So I kind of struggle to get on board with that as like a 7+ wins thing here because, I mean, the first 7 games, Bears, Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts, Bills, Lions, first 8 games. They might not win a game.
That's it, right? And you mentioned they're not favored to that New England game, and that first stretch of 8 is rough. Will Levis just can't take sacks like he's done all throughout college and last year. Turned the football over. I think people also fell in love with. I mean, he's athletic. The arm strength is there. Get off to a great start, just torching the Falcons in that first game, just chucking the ball deep, scoring touchdowns. You're like, oh shit, this guy maybe has it. The rest of it wasn't very good. And so again, they went out and said, hey, look, this is the way to do it. You got the rookie quarterback. Again, it's not even a first round pick. So the contract's even cheaper. Let's be aggressive. Let's give him some bodies. Let's see if we can, try to change here. I think the running backs are guys that can win on passing downs too. So, it's a lot on Daddy Callahan. Can he get the offensive line up to a league average level and keep Levis protected? Because I think the defense can be okay. I think, the Snead move is nice. Chidobuzi is nice. McCreary is decent. The decent safety room. They need Simmons and Landry to get a ton of pressure and stay healthy. I think that's a big part of it too. But I think they'll be okay defensively. And I think it's fine. Like, I don't really have any like strong takes overall on the Titans. The schedule is brutal. I'm pulling for Levis to be exciting and good because I think that'd be fun. But I think 6.5 is probably fine. I think you probably got a good number. 5.5 I think is probably the right price. But I think as of 6.5 is I'd probably lean under. But it's kind of juiced that way, and I don't have really any appetite for it. So yeah, I think it's probably a 5 to 7 win football team that can be competitive, beat some teams because everything clicks for Levis that day. Defense shows up and they catch some teams in the wrong way. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Can they, as a kind of a unique group that doesn't have a lot of continuity, can they get through that first stretch? And can the rookie head coach not lose the locker room? And can they kind of, survive that? Because that's tough, man. That schedule is like, whew. And you get the early bye. Sometimes I don't love that like first bye. So that's kind of it for me on the Titans. I don't have a lot of hard takes.
Like, yeah, are they even able to have a running game? Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard are both kind of like these smallish scat back, kind of like plus backs. They haven't really shown too much of an interest in like establishing any kind of power running game. So I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see what that looks like. Obviously, Callahan comes from the Bengals, where the Bengals would like oscillate between like under center and like power running, and then like 3 wide, basically just like 11 personnel throwing the ball every play when Burrow is healthy. Do they believe in Will Levis to do that? But like, can they even run the ball like out of like under center if they want to? I don't know. I have no idea. So there's a lot of questions here with this Titans team. It would definitely surprise me if they won more than like 7 or 8 games. But yes. I think that their roster as a whole is good enough to probably win at least 4 or 5. So I don't know. It's kind of like a narrow range of outcome teams, in my opinion, barring like Will Levis basically just being like, CJ Stroud this year or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, they want to play a lot of press man with this group too. So we'll see how that goes. Kind of a new Denard Wilson, new defensive coordinator. They got the guys to do it. It's a decent secondary, a decent cornerback room. So yeah, I think they could be competitive. Like I said, it just falls on Will Levis. Can he just not turn it over and not take sacks at like a ridiculous clip? That's kind of it. But yeah, I'm with you. I 7 is really, I would lead under because I think 7 is kind of the ceiling. I think that they're not nearly as good as the Colts. They're nowhere near where the Texans are, and Jacksonville probably just has more pedigree because they have more proven coach quarterback combination. But the Titans can win some of those games when it gets easier. They just got to survive that first run. So yeah,
it's tough too. I want to give Levis a little bit of a pass for some of last year too. I mean, half the year he was throwing just like fucking Nick Westbrook Akine and a bunch of bums out there with like a hurt DeAndre Hopkins in a system that like wasn't good. So like
the worst offensive line in the league.
Yeah, right. So it's like a lot of things going against him. So like I almost like think that we're not double counting Vrabel leaving, but like Vrabel left, but they like changed everything and added a lot of good players. So like it's kind of like that balance of going back and forth of like I do think Vrabel's a good coach, but he was just a different kind of good coach than what we're going to see now. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what it looks like. I guess that's what I would say. I'm like not necessarily either way, just interested to see what happens.
Yeah, no, I'm with you too. We get a good sense of that. I mean, the Chicago-Tennessee game doesn't jump off on paper as like a super exciting week 1 game, but it's like the teams are going to look different, right? I want to see what that looks like in those 2 spots. So it will be one to watch for sure. So, all right, we'll wrap this up. Agree on the Texans, and I think we're both, maybe to different degrees, but like equally, bullish on the Colts having some exciting upside here, depending on what happens with Anthony Richardson. So, good stuff as always. Again, appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Anything for the people here on the South before we wrap it up?
Yeah, we're making we have a bunch of announcements going on right now. We're releasing some preseason DFS/pick'em plays in our Discord right now. So if you don't have a subscription already, hop in there. Intern Jake, killing it so far, putting out some plays. Got lucky there with the game being delayed, so we won some plays last night that were solid, but just because Underdog and Prize Picks were nice about it and Vivid. So that's good. We'll have that, and then we're going to be launching some new big stuff coming up, a couple more announcements with people we're hiring. We're going to have a ton of different plays, props, analysis, everything. So definitely don't want to miss out.
Yeah. 4for4.com/plans. Get the betting subscription. That's going to get you access to all of those plays that Connor's talking about. Pick 'em plays, our normal plays that we'll have in season, futures coming out. It also gets you access to literally all the other stuff. So season-long leagues, best ball drafts, if you're still doing that stuff, high stakes, all the tools that we have on the site as well. The betting subscription is where you want to be. It's going to get you all of the stuff there. So definitely check that out. And again, 4for4 bets on the YouTube channel. We appreciate that. Thumbs up, subscribe, and then move the line wherever you listen to podcasts as well. We will be back again here shortly, continuing the AFC before we get into all the week 1 stuff. So we'll probably have some futures here coming too. So again, subscribe so you don't miss all that stuff. For Connor, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.